In the heart of the ancient world, a great civilization once flourished, its cities resplendent with towering pyramids, sprawling plazas, and a population that numbered in the millions. For centuries, the Maya stood as a shining example of human achievement, their mastery of art, science, and politics, the envy of their age. Yet, by the end of the 9th century CE, many of their greatest cities lay abandoned, their temples and palaces reclaimed by the relentless jungle. This is the story of the Maya collapse, a centuries-long decline that saw one of history's most advanced civilizations fall into ruin. But it is also a tale of resilience and transformation, of a people who faced the collapse of their world and found ways to adapt and endure. Join us as we explore the rise and fall of the ancient Maya, from the heights of their power to the depths of their decline. Through the lens of archaeology, climate science, and epigraphy, we will piece together the complex web of factors that brought about the end of an era and discover what this ancient catastrophe can teach us about the fate of our own civilization in the face of mounting environmental and social challenges. The Maya collapse is a mystery that has long captivated scholars and the public alike. But it is a mystery that, slowly but surely, is beginning to unfold. Let us embark on this journey together and unravel the secrets of this fascinating chapter in human history. At the height of their civilization, the Maya built some of the most spectacular cities the ancient world had ever seen. These urban centers were the heart of Maya life, serving as the political, economic, and religious hubs of their respective regions. Cities like Tikal, Calakmul, and Copan were home to tens of thousands of people, their populations supported by sophisticated agricultural systems and extensive trade networks. One of the most awe-inspiring aspects of these cities was their monumental architecture. The Maya were master builders, and they channeled their wealth and labor into the construction of colossal pyramids, expansive plazas, and ornate palaces. At Tikal, for example, the Great Plaza was flanked by two massive temples, each rising over 150 feet into the air. These structures were not merely feats of engineering, but also powerful symbols of the city's might and the authority of its rulers. The Maya cities were also centers of intellectual pursuits and artistic expression. Scribes and artists worked tirelessly to create intricate murals, sculptures, and ceramics that celebrated the achievements of their kings and the stories of their gods. In places like Palenque, these works reached a level of sophistication and beauty that rivaled anything else in the ancient world. But perhaps the most remarkable aspect of the Maya cities was their sheer size and complexity. At their peak, some of these urban centers covered an area of over 30 square miles, with populations that may have exceeded 100,000 people. Supporting such large populations required an incredible amount of organization and planning, from the construction of extensive water management systems to the development of complex trade networks that brought in goods from across the region. The city of Copan, located in present-day Honduras, provides a prime example of this complexity. Copan was built along the banks of a river, and its rulers constructed an elaborate system of canals and reservoirs to manage the flow of water through the city. They also built a series of terraces along the hillsides surrounding the city, which allowed them to maximize the amount of land available for agriculture. This agricultural productivity was crucial to the success of the Maya cities. The Maya were skilled farmers, and they developed a range of techniques for growing crops in the challenging environment of the tropical lowlands. These included raised fields, which allowed them to cultivate crops in areas prone to flooding, and terracing, which helped to prevent soil erosion on hillsides. However, as impressive as these cities were, they were also vulnerable to the very forces that had allowed them to thrive in the first place. The Mayas' reliance on a complex system of agriculture and trade meant that any disruption to that system could have catastrophic consequences. And as the population of the cities grew, so too did the strain on the surrounding environment. Beneath the veneer of prosperity and grandeur in the Maya cities, there were growing signs of social and political strains that threatened the stability of the civilization. As the cities grew in size and complexity, the inequalities between the ruling elite and the common people became increasingly pronounced, leading to mounting tensions and conflicts. One of the most significant sources of strain was the growing power and wealth of the ruling class. The kings and nobles of the Maya cities lived in opulent palaces, adorned with intricate carvings and lavish decorations. They enjoyed a lifestyle of luxury and privilege, supported by the labor and tribute of the common people. In contrast, the lives of the farmers, artisans, and laborers who made up the vast majority of the population were marked by hardship and toil. They lived in simple homes, often little more than thatched huts, and worked long hours in the fields or workshops to support themselves and their families. As the demands of the elite grew, so too did the burden on the common people. Farmers were required to produce ever greater quantities of food to support the growing urban population, while artisans and laborers were tasked with constructing the monumental temples, palaces, and public works that symbolized the power and prestige of the ruling class. This growing inequality led to mounting resentment and discontent among the common people. While the exact nature of their grievances is difficult to discern from the archaeological record, there are hints of social unrest and resistance to the demands of the elite. For example, at the city of Copan, archaeologists have discovered evidence of a major revolt that took place in the early 9th century. The city's Grand Plaza, which had once been the center of elite power and ceremony, was deliberately destroyed and burned, suggesting a violent uprising against the ruling class. Political tensions were also on the rise between the various city-states that made up the Maya world. As the cities grew in power and influence, they began to compete with one another for resources, trade routes, and political dominance. This competition often took the form of warfare, with armies of warriors clashing in bloody battles that could last for days. The stakes of these conflicts were high, with the losing side often facing the prospect of conquest, tribute, or even the sacrifice of their leaders. One of the most famous examples of this intercity warfare was the long-standing rivalry between Tikal and Calakmul, two of the most powerful city-states in the Maya world. Over the course of several centuries, these two cities engaged in a series of wars and alliances, with each seeking to establish its dominance over the other. As these social and political strains intensified, they began to take a toll on the fabric of Maya society. The growing inequality and resentment among the common people, coupled with the constant warfare and political instability, created a situation that was increasingly unsustainable. In the face of these mounting challenges, the Maya were forced to confront the limitations of their social and political systems. As the strains on their civilization grew, they would soon be pushed to the brink of collapse. As the Maya civilization grappled with the growing social and political strains that threatened its stability, a new and even more daunting challenge emerged: a series of severe and prolonged droughts that struck the region during the Terminal Classic period. The evidence for these droughts can be found in a variety of sources, from lake sediments to cave stalagmites. One of the most compelling pieces of evidence comes from a study of sediment cores taken from Lake Chichancanab in Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula. These cores show a marked increase in gypsum deposits during the Terminal Classic period, indicating a significant decrease in rainfall. The impact of these droughts on the Maya civilization cannot be overstated. Agriculture was the backbone of the Maya economy, and the lack of rainfall would have had a devastating impact on crop yields. The Maya were skilled farmers, having developed sophisticated techniques such as raised fields, terracing, and intensive forest gardening to maximize their crop production. However, these methods were ultimately dependent on a reliable supply of water. As the droughts set in, the delicate balance that had sustained Maya agriculture began to unravel. Fields that had once been lush and productive turned to dust, and the complex irrigation systems that the Maya had built to manage water resources began to fail. The result was widespread crop failure and food shortages, leading to hunger, malnutrition, and social unrest. One of the areas hardest hit by the droughts was the Patexpatun region of Guatemala, where a number of important Maya cities were located. At the city of Dos Pilas, archaeologists have found evidence of a desperate attempt to collect and store water using reservoirs and canals. However, these measures proved insufficient in the face of the prolonged dry spell, and the city was eventually abandoned. The impact of the droughts was not limited to agriculture alone. The lack of water would have also had a profound impact on the daily lives of the Maya people. With rivers and lakes drying up, access to clean drinking water would have become increasingly difficult, leading to the spread of waterborne diseases and further exacerbating the health crisis. Moreover, the scarcity of resources would have likely fueled increased competition and conflict between city-states, as rulers sought to secure access to dwindling water supplies and productive agricultural land. This, in turn, would have further destabilized the already fragile political landscape of the Maya world. As the droughts persisted, the very foundations of Maya society began to crumble. The ruling elite, whose power and legitimacy were tied to their ability to provide for their subjects, found themselves increasingly unable to meet the basic needs of their people. At the same time, the common people, faced with chronic food shortages and the breakdown of social order, began to lose faith in the institutions and beliefs that had once held their society together. As the pressures of drought, warfare, and societal upheaval mounted, the Maya cities of the southern lowlands began to experience a dramatic decline in population. This period, known as the Terminal Classic, saw the abandonment of many of the great urban centers that had once been the heart of the Maya civilization. The evidence for this depopulation can be seen in the archaeological record. In city after city, the palaces and temples that had once been the center of life fell into disrepair and were eventually reclaimed by the jungle. The grand plazas that had once been filled with the bustle of daily life grew silent and empty. One of the most striking examples of this abandonment can be seen in the city of Tikal. At its height in the 8th century, Tikal was one of the largest and most powerful cities in the Maya world, with a population that may have reached 60,000 to 90,000 people. But by the end of the 9th century, the city was largely abandoned, its once great temples and palaces left to crumble. Archaeologists have found evidence of this decline in the form of hastily abandoned homes, with pottery and other belongings left scattered on the floors. In some cases, the dead were left unburied, their bones found scattered among the ruins. These signs point to a population that was forced to flee quickly, perhaps in the face of warfare, famine, or other calamities. The depopulation of the southern lowlands was not a sudden event, but rather a gradual process that unfolded over the course of a century or more. Some cities, like Tikal, may have been abandoned relatively quickly, while others, like Calakmul, may have experienced a more gradual decline. One factor that may have contributed to the abandonment of the cities was the breakdown of the complex trade networks that had once sustained them. As the droughts and warfare took their toll, the flow of goods and resources between cities would have been disrupted, making it increasingly difficult for the urban centers to support their populations. Another factor may have been the loss of faith in the ruling elite and the traditional belief systems that had once held Maya society together. As the kings and nobles proved unable to prevent the calamities that befell their cities, their legitimacy and authority would have been undermined. leading to a breakdown of social order and cohesion. Ultimately, the depopulation of the southern lowlands had a profound impact on the Maya civilization. As the cities were abandoned and the population scattered, much of the knowledge, skills, and cultural traditions that had been developed over centuries were lost. The great artistic and intellectual achievements of the classic period, from the intricate hieroglyphic writing system to the sophisticated astronomical observations, were largely forgotten. As the cities of the southern lowlands collapsed and their populations dwindled, a new center of power was emerging in the north. The cities of the Yucatan Peninsula, such as Chichen Itza and Uxmal, began to thrive just as their southern counterparts were falling into ruin. The rise of the northern cities was due in part to a combination of geographic and environmental factors. The Yucatan Peninsula is a flat, limestone plain with a relatively dry climate, punctuated by sinkholes called cenotes that provide access to underground water sources. These cenotes, along with the peninsula's proximity to the coast and its extensive trade networks, allowed the northern cities to weather the droughts and political upheaval that had devastated the south. One of the most notable examples of this northern resurgence was the city of Chichen Itza. Located in the heart of the Yucatan Peninsula, Chichen Itza emerged as a major power in the 10th century CE, just as the southern lowlands were in decline. The city was a marvel of engineering and artistry, with massive pyramids, elaborate ball courts, and a sophisticated system of roads and causeways that connected it to other parts of the region. At the center of Chichen Itza's power was the cult of the feathered serpent god, Kukulkan. This deity, which was closely associated with the planet Venus and the concept of rebirth and renewal, became a central figure in the religious and political life of the city. The Great Pyramid at the heart of Chichen Itza, known as El Castillo, was dedicated to Kukulkan and served as a symbol of the city's might and influence. But Chichen Itza was more than just a religious center. It was also a major hub of trade and commerce, with a thriving market that drew merchants from across Mesoamerica. The city's strategic location on the trade routes between the Caribbean and the Gulf of Mexico allowed it to control the flow of goods and ideas between different regions, giving it a significant economic and political advantage. As it grew in power and influence, it began to exert its authority over other cities in the northern lowlands. Through a combination of military conquest, diplomacy, and economic coercion, the rulers of the city established a loosely organized empire that stretched across much of the Yucatan Peninsula. However, the rise of Chichen Itza and the other northern cities was not without its challenges. Like their southern counterparts, the northern Maya faced the ongoing threat of drought and environmental degradation. They also had to contend with the growing influence of other Mesoamerican cultures, such as the Toltecs of central Mexico, who began to make their presence felt in the Yucatan Peninsula during this period. Ultimately, the shifting balance of power in the Maya world would have far-reaching consequences for the civilization as a whole. As the northern cities grew in strength and influence, they would play an increasingly important role in shaping the political, economic, and cultural landscape of the post-classic period. But even as they adapted to the challenges of a changing world, the legacy of the southern lowland cities would continue to cast a long shadow over the Maya civilization. The collapse of the southern lowland cities was a turning point in Maya history, but it was not the end of the Maya civilization. In the centuries that followed, the Maya people demonstrated remarkable resilience and adaptability, transforming their society and culture in response to the challenges they faced. One of the most striking examples of this transformation can be seen in the emergence of new forms of political organization. In the northern lowlands, the rigid hierarchies of the classic period gave way to more decentralized and collective forms of governance. The multipole system, in which power was shared among multiple lineages, became more common, as did the rise of smaller, more autonomous city-states. This shift towards decentralization and power sharing may have been a response to the failures of the old system, which had proven unable to cope with the stresses of drought, warfare, and social upheaval. By distributing power more widely, the Maya may have hoped to create a more resilient and adaptable political structure, one that could better withstand the challenges of a changing world. Another key aspect of the Maya transformation was the rise of new forms of economic exchange. The collapse of the southern lowland cities had disrupted the traditional networks of trade and tribute that had once sustained the Maya elite. In the centuries that followed, however, new economic systems emerged, centered around the production and exchange of specialized goods such as cotton, cacao, and salt. These new economic networks were often centered around coastal trade routes, which allowed the Maya to tap into the wider Mesoamerican world. The rise of port cities like Tulum and Xcaret, which thrived on the exchange of goods between the Maya heartland and other parts of the region, is a testament to the Maya's ability to adapt to new economic realities. But perhaps the most remarkable aspect of the Maya transformation was the endurance of their cultural heritage. Despite the collapse of their great cities and the upheaval of their political and economic systems, the Maya people managed to preserve and adapt their cultural traditions, passing them down from generation to generation. This cultural resilience can be seen in the persistence of the Maya language, which continues to be spoken by millions of people across Central America to this day. It can also be seen in the survival of traditional Maya practices, such as the use of the 260-day ritual calendar and the veneration of ancestral deities. Even in the face of conquest and colonization by the Spanish, the Maya managed to maintain their cultural identity. The famous Maya book known as the Popol Vuh, which tells the story of the creation of the world and the history of the Maya people, was written down in the 16th century by Maya scribes using the Latin alphabet. This remarkable document, which draws on centuries of oral tradition, is a testament to the enduring power of Maya culture. For centuries, the collapse of the classic Maya civilization remained one of the great mysteries of the ancient world. How could such a brilliant and sophisticated society, one that had thrived for so long, suddenly fall into ruin? What were the factors that led to the abandonment of the great cities of the South, and how did the Maya people manage to adapt and endure in the face of such overwhelming challenges? In recent decades, archaeologists and other scholars have made great strides in unraveling the complex web of factors that contributed to the Maya collapse. Through a combination of excavation, analysis, and interpretation, they have pieced together a picture of a civilization in crisis, one that was ultimately unable to withstand the pressures of a changing world. One of the key tools in this effort has been the study of the Maya's own written records. The Maya were one of the few ancient civilizations to develop a sophisticated system of writing, using a complex set of hieroglyphs to record their history, beliefs, and knowledge. By deciphering these texts, scholars have gained invaluable insights into the political, economic, and social structure of Maya society, as well as the challenges and conflicts that it faced. Another important source of information has been the archaeological record itself. Through careful excavation and analysis of the ruins of Maya cities, archaeologists have been able to reconstruct the daily lives of the Maya people, from the food they ate and the tools they used to the ways in which they organized their society and interacted with one another. One of the most remarkable discoveries in recent years has been the extent of the Maya's environmental impact. Through the use of advanced technologies like LiDAR, archaeologists have been able to map the vast network of agricultural terraces, canals, and reservoirs that the Maya built to support their growing population. These studies have revealed the incredible scale of the Maya's environmental transformation, as well as the ways in which their land use practices may have contributed to their ultimate downfall. But perhaps the most significant breakthrough in our understanding of the Maya collapse has come from the study of the ancient climate. Through the analysis of lake sediments, cave formations, and other natural records, scientists have been able to reconstruct the patterns of rainfall and drought that affected the Maya region over the centuries. These studies have revealed the extent to which the Maya were vulnerable to shifts in the climate, and how the repeated droughts of the terminal classic period may have pushed their society to the brink of collapse. Together, these lines of evidence have allowed scholars to construct a more comprehensive and nuanced picture of the Maya collapse. Rather than a single catastrophic event, the collapse is now understood as a complex and multifaceted process, one that unfolded over centuries and was shaped by a wide range of factors, from environmental degradation and climate change to political instability and social upheaval. The story of the Maya collapse is one that has captivated the imaginations of people around the world for generations. It is a tale of a civilization that reached astonishing heights of achievement, only to fall into ruin and obscurity. Perhaps the most remarkable aspect of the Maya legacy is the endurance of their culture and traditions, despite the upheaval and devastation of the collapse. Even as their great cities were abandoned and their political and economic systems crumbled, the Maya people managed to preserve and adapt their way of life, passing down their language, beliefs, and customs from generation to generation. Today, millions of Maya descendants continue to live and thrive in the lands of their ancestors, from the highlands of Guatemala to the Yucatan Peninsula of Mexico. They speak a variety of Mayan languages, practice traditional crafts and agriculture, and maintain a deep connection to the natural world. This cultural resilience is a testament to the strength and adaptability of the Maya people, who have faced centuries of challenges and hardships, from the collapse of their ancient civilization to the more recent struggles of colonialism, poverty, and political oppression. Through it all, they have managed to preserve their identity and their way of life, drawing on the wisdom and traditions of their ancestors to navigate the changing world around them. But the Maya legacy is not just one of cultural survival and adaptation. It is also a cautionary tale about the dangers of environmental degradation, political instability, and social inequality. The story of the Maya collapse serves as a stark reminder of how even the most advanced and sophisticated societies can fall victim to the unintended consequences of their own actions. As we grapple with the challenges of our own time, from climate change and resource depletion to political polarization and economic inequality, we would do well to heed the lessons of the Maya. We must learn to live within the limits of our planet, to build more resilient and equitable societies, and to find ways to bridge our differences and work together towards common goals. In the words of Maya scholar and activist Rigoberta Menchú Tum, we are not myths of the past, ruins in the jungle, or zoos. We are people, and we want to be respected, not to be victims of intolerance and racism. The Maya legacy is one of endurance and adaptation, a legacy that has much to teach us as we navigate the challenges and opportunities of our own time.